The office buzzed with energy as employees hurried past your desk, each of them deeply involved in the whirlwind of the new CEO's arrival. You were no exception, focused on finishing a report, but your mind wasn't entirely on the task at hand. Your fingers hovered over the keyboard, eyes skimming the page without truly processing the words. You'd been working hard to put your past behind you, but fate, it seemed, had other plans. Your phone buzzed on the desk, a reminder of the meeting that was about to start. Taking a deep breath, you collected your things, ready to face another day. You were used to this routine, used to pushing your emotions aside, keeping the personal separate from the professional. But nothing could have prepared you for the moment you stepped into that conference room. When you entered, you froze. Your eyes locked on him, the last person you ever expected to see again. JUNG KOOK, the man who had left you all those years ago, when you were pregnant with his child, without a single word of explanation. Now, he stood at the head of the room, his sharp gaze scanning the crowd of employees. He was dressed in a tailored suit that perfectly fit his now leaner, more polished physique. There was no hint of the man you once knew, only the cold, distant CEO that everyone spoke about in hushed tones. Your breath hitched, and for a moment the world around you seemed to blur. The room felt too small, the air too thick. He hadn't seen you yet, and you took that moment to steady yourself, to remind yourself of who you were now. A woman who had fought to stand on her own, no longer reliant on someone who had abandoned her. "In!" The voice came like a dagger through the air, familiar but so foreign now. Your heart skipped a beat as he finally looked in your direction, his expression unreadable. The room fell silent, everyone waiting for the interaction. You met his gaze, and for a split second, all the pain of the past rushed back. But you didn't flinch. You couldn't. You stood tall, your voice steady as you spoke. "Mr. John," you said, using his formal title with a calmness that surprised even yourself. "I didn't realize I'd be reporting to you." The tension in the air was palpable. Everyone watched the two of you, waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. But it was him who spoke first, his voice low, almost hesitant. "It's been a long time, Yin." "5 years," you responded sharply, refusing to let him see any sign of weakness. "A lot can change in that time." His eyes flickered with something you couldn't quite read, and for a moment, you wondered if he even remembered the pain he had caused, the promises he had broken. "Yes," he said quietly, his gaze never leaving yours. "I'm sorry." You didn't respond immediately. The apology felt hollow, too little too late. Instead, you forced a smile that hid all the years of hurt, of loneliness, of raising your child alone. "Let's get to work then, Mr. John. I'll be handling the marketing strategy for the new product launch." With that, you turned, walking towards your seat at the table. Jungkook's eyes followed you, but you didn't look back. You couldn't afford to. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. Every word he spoke seemed to cut through you, yet you remained focused, your attention solely on the task at hand. He didn't bring up the past again, and you didn't either. The awkwardness between the two of you was thick, but you kept your distance, reminding yourself that you weren't that woman anymore. As the meeting ended and everyone filtered out, you gathered your things quickly, hoping to leave before he could speak to you again. But before you could make your escape, you felt a presence behind you. "Yin." His voice was softer now, almost vulnerable. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know I regret leaving. More than you know." You paused, your back still to him. The words hurt, not because they were a revelation, but because they were what you'd needed to hear all those years ago. But it was too late now. "I've moved on, Jung Kook," you said without turning around, your voice calm but firm. "You're my boss now, and that's all that matters." With that, you walked away, leaving him standing there, the weight of his regrets hanging in the air between you both. The days that followed were nothing short of excruciating. The tension between you and Jungkook was thick, undeniable. Every glance, Every word exchanged during meetings felt charged with a history neither of you could ignore. But you had made it clear. There was no room for the past in your present. You were here for one reason, and one reason only: to succeed, for yourself and for your child. Despite your best efforts to keep things professional, there were moments when you felt his eyes on you, the weight of his gaze like a physical touch. It made your skin prickle, and for a brief second, the memories of what you had once shared flooded back. You hated how easily he could make your heart race with nothing but a look, even after everything that had happened. One afternoon, as you sat in your office catching up on work, a soft knock on the door pulled you from your thoughts. You didn't even need to look up to know who it was. "Can we talk?" Jungkook's voice was low, tentative, a stark contrast to the confident CEO you saw every day in the boardroom. You paused, your pen hovering over the report you were working on. It would have been easy to refuse, to tell him you were busy, but something inside you urged you to face this, to face him once and for all. "Fine," you said, setting the pen down and leaning back in your chair, crossing your arms. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click. His presence filled the room, his eyes scanning your office as if unsure where to begin. It had been years, but you could still feel the pull of his presence, the gravity he had always held over you. "How have you been?" he asked, his voice softer than you remembered, though tinged with uncertainty. You raised an eyebrow, surprised at the question. "How do you think I've been, Jungkook?" "I've been fine. I've had to be." He nodded slowly, looking like he wanted to say more, but hesitated. You didn't want to give him the chance to make excuses. Instead, you cut to the chase. "Why now? Why come back into my life after everything? You left me with nothing but a broken heart and a baby on the way. What did you think? That I'd wait for you to come back?" His face softened, regret flickering in his eyes. "I didn't think you'd wait, Yin. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing. For my career. For both of us. For the future." You let out a bitter laugh. "The future?" "You left me alone with no explanation. You made a choice, and I had to deal with the consequences." His hands clenched at his sides. "I know I fucked up. I know I can't undo the past. But I need you to understand. I was scared. I was young, and I didn't know how to handle everything. I thought if I made it to the top, everything would work itself out. But it didn't. I lost you. And that's the one thing I can never fix." You stared at him, the weight of his words settling into your chest. For the briefest of moments, you saw the man you once loved, the man you had hoped would come back, the man who had torn your world apart. The urge to reach out and comfort him tugged at your heart, but you held your ground. "You can't fix it, Jungkook. Not now, not after everything." He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving yours. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm sorry for everything. I've changed. I'm different now. I know it doesn't make up for what I did, but I want to try. I want to prove to you that I'm not the same man who left." You swallowed hard, feeling a pang in your chest as his words hung in the air between you. Could you even allow him to try? Could you trust him again after everything? Before you could respond, a knock at the door interrupted your thoughts. You both turned toward the sound, and in walked your assistant, nervously glancing between you and Jungkook. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent matter that requires your attention, Ms. Win." You shot a glance at Jungkook, the weight of his words still hanging in the air, but your professional side kicked in. "I'll be right there," you said, giving your assistant a polite nod. Jungkook seemed to sense the shift, taking a step back. I'll let you get back to work," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. As he turned to leave, you found yourself watching him go. A part of you wanted to reach out, to ask him to stay, but you couldn't let that happen. Not yet. Not until you figured out what you truly felt. With a deep breath, you turned your attention back to the assistant, the weight of the conversation still lingering, unresolved.